they just like the idea of I want to study in the US, Canada, UK. Teachers really spoon feed you and give you after 36 odd years. States are not implementing it. And if you see these rankings, you only have the IISCs and the IIMs or IITs. You're able to really enjoy the subjects once you come with work experience. Industry collaborations. MBA is what? It's a man made degree. It's still quite heavy on top.
Indian higher education sector is one of the largest in the entire world with more than 40,000 colleges and over 1,000 universities. However, the first preference of many students of our country would be to get a degree from a foreign university. What might be the reason behind it? What is the future of Indian higher education system? To know the answers to these questions, let's welcome Mr. Ajitesh Basani, who is the Executive Director Administration at Acharya Bangalore Business School. Hi Ajitesh, I welcome you to the Creative Careers podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Nita.
So before we get into the actual conversation, I would request you to introduce yourself and let us know a bit about in which sector you work.
Yeah, so just to give you a quick background, I currently work in the higher education and school education space. I'm the secretary of Samagra Sikshana Samiti Trust. We have multiple institutions, right from nursery to PhD level. So, my work is mainly administration and setting up new projects. And given that my background, I have a background in sustainable energy. That's where I did my master's from the US. And then prior to that, I studied industrial engineering. Like most people, I did engineering. Of course, I couldn't make the most out of that. But the education space is a very interesting space. If you have a bit of resilience, it's a good space to be in. So I decided to uh, stay in this space.
Right. Why sustainable energy? I mean,
So,
any
to be
specific
very
reason?
honest, purely out of passion, because I was extremely interested about renewables and how the future of energy would kind of change. Because right now, the energy mix is a lot of changes are happening, transitions are happening. So, when I was studying of course, there's a lot of improvement in technology today, but those are the early days when um, a lot was happening, especially in California. And I wanted to kind of
Right.
be at the forefront of talk to people and really understand what's happening and what the future is. So it gave me a lot of perspective on where India as a country can also go towards. We have multiple options today. So yeah, purely passion, nothing else.
Right. So since you yourself have done higher education, so India's higher education sector is one of the largest in the entire world. But most of the, if you can see, like most of the students' preference even now is like to do a degree or higher education preference will be from a foreign university. So why is that the case according to you?
Yeah, so I think that's deeply rooted in cultural requirements and interests because one is, there is the dream has always been there, right? To go to the US and um, this dream of a better life in a foreign land that has always been there since the 80s, and people have always migrated. And despite whatever people say, if you look at the number of people going abroad has only been increasing. And
No.
to be very frank, right, it's for, you go there for the whole experience. You don't go there particularly for the degree. um, Degree can be done in India, it can be done abroad, but why does a student go abroad? He goes for the entire experience of meeting new people, trying a different uh, s- uh, what do you call it, different cuisines, trying out, um, just understanding a different way of life, I guess. And if you see, the migration has always been to a first world country, to be very blunt. um, that has always been there. It will continue to be there unless some political changes happen, or some instabilities happen in these countries. And but if you look at the percentage, it's not as big. Like the number of people who go abroad and the number of people who don't go abroad. Yes, it's of course always increasing. It has always been an aspirational desire of most people. Most kids these days want to go abroad, and if you observe, most of them will not know more than the top 10 or 20 universities abroad. Beyond that, they'll not know. They just like the idea of I want to study in the US, Canada, UK, wherever. So I guess that's a thing that students, parents, everyone. There's also somewhere peer pressure, the peer pressure of okay,
Right.
my friends are going, so I need to go. So I remember when I went, right, like I went
Mm.
to the US. It was the same time when all my friends from engineering went uh, abroad. So nearly 50% of them decided, okay, we'll either study in Europe or US. And of course, if you look at, if I have to kind of get into the depth of it, if you look at the way the education is delivered there, it's really not spoon fed. So you'll really see a
Right.
difference. Like, for instance, right, in India, I've realized people or teachers really spoon feed you and give you so much support and guidance that they make sure that the entire focus is towards exams. Like, how do I make sure that he's prepared for the exams? But in the US, at least, uh, it was purely application. Like, how can I apply these concepts to a real world scenario? And how is this applicable to an XYZ company? So it was very
Right.
different for me initially to learn, because the professors never looked at something as right answer, wrong answer. They always let you be inquisitive, let you be curious. So most of our discussions were almost open ended. Uh, they never expected, okay, this is what you need to say to the question I'm asking you. So that kind of gives students freedom, right? It gives you freedom, and then you realize that education is not just these marks. Marks are great. I mean, good if you have a 3.8, 3.9 GPA, but beyond that, are you able to apply that problem and give a solution? So that's where the difference comes in, and that's where I kind of felt that this is interesting, and you actually get motivated to learn. So you don't feel like, oh, I have to study or I have to finish this exam. That becomes a very big factor for us to choose university.
Right. So basically, for each question, maybe different students can have different perception to answer that question. So that's what you think, like, not only think, but it is actually prevalent in foreign countries, but not in India. For any specific question, you have to write a specific answer. That's what is in India. That's
Yeah,
what.
absolutely. Because the class mix of students is also very different. So, for instance, right, in my sustainable energy batch, we had working professionals, people who were married and they wanted to come back to master's program. So you really get different perspectives from different people, because that
Right.
always helps, especially at a master's level, right? When you have only freshers, your perspective or your answers is very limited. But then you get somebody
Yes.
who's married, you get somebody who's worked for 10 years in a big company. Really, you really feel like, at least for me, I felt like I didn't know anything. uh, so that learning is not just from professor to teach student, but also from my peers around me. And it was just really totally enriching, and the opportunities that you get when you interact with them is, it goes beyond just what you learn in class.
Right. So what is, according to you, is the future of Indian education system?
See, the future of Indian education system, I'm an optimist. At the same time, you have to have a bit of reality somewhere, reality check. So it really depends, right? So we have this thing placed after 36 odd years called the NEP 2020. A policy is great until it's implemented. Like, you can make whatever policy you want, it doesn't really matter. It can be very simple, it can be futuristic, but states are not implementing it. If you see today, that's the problem with NEP. Few states are doing it, few states aren't doing it. They're saying no, we'll follow state education policy. For instance, in Karnataka, they follow what's called the state education policy. So
Yeah.
it becomes very difficult for the broader vision of where we want to take the country forward. Uh, we have the fundamentals in place where we have these milestones where, okay, are we going to reach graduate enrollment ratio of 50%? Because right now it's in the late 20s, 27, 28%, maybe 30s soon. But to ensure more people get into the higher education system has been one of the goals of NEP. So, in
Yeah.
terms of the future, it's bright because Indians, by default or by this education system, have always done well abroad, everywhere in India, abroad. So, there's no like denying that uh, because we have been known as hardworking individuals who are very dedicated. But if you have to look at it as, are we going to compare India with the rest of the world? We have a long way to go. If you look at purely metrics of rankings, we're always somewhere in the 200s, 300s, 500s range. And if you see these rankings, you only have the IISCs and the IIMs or IITs or whatever. Very few private institutions actually are there in the forefront. So really it depends on what race that we want to kind of run. If you start getting into, okay, the entire goal is, can we get an Indian institution in the top hundreds or top 50s, the question becomes, okay, you're getting it there, but then how many of them are going there? Because today, right, if you look at the Indian education system, 40 to 45,000 odd colleges, close to 1,000 plus universities, it's quite big, and the scale is big, and we'll probably need more. But at the
Yeah.
same time, right, the idea is to uplift and bring all the universities and colleges together in terms of quality education. So one small example I'll tell you, right? Like, for instance, you have
Yeah.
China. China has done extremely well in the last 10 to 20 years, last 2 decades, because uh, their policies have been very firm, very almost, it is authoritarian in its own sense, but then it has worked for them. They tend to rank a lot higher than us in the world rankings, and they're also backed heavily by the government. So if you look at how much of the GDP is actually spent on education, China is somewhere between, I think, 5 or 6%. I'm not sure. India
Yeah.
has always allocated close to 2%. So I think the future is bright unless people or the government looks at uplifting grassroots level institutions, making sure that
Right.
more funding is there towards teacher education, because infrastructure is not the question. The question is, can we empower more teachers? Can we bring in more people into the system? Because for the longest time, people don't like coming into the education sector because how complex it is or how difficult it is to navigate.
Right. Right. Yeah. So basically, do you think that we Indians have a perception like government colleges, getting admission in a government college is more way better than getting admission in private college? I mean, we Indians think that private college doesn't provide that quality education, which is absolutely wrong because I have done my master's from private
Amazing.
institute, but the quality of education is exceptionally good. It is as good as you're getting an education from a foreign university. So I could not find that difference. So what is according to you? I mean, why is that mindset, and is it really valid to have that mindset?
No, that's the dangerous thing, right? Because government institutions, there's no real, what do you call it, onus on somebody. There's some fund is allocated, and people work according to their own ways. And then the other problem is there's no scope for creativity, because when the requirement is not there, you don't push your
Yeah,
teachers, your staff to think beyond, unless the government says, okay, can you implement this? So they'll not do anything that goes beyond. Whereas private institutions, and India has more than 70% private institutions. If you look at private institutions, you have, in a sense, right, it's almost run like a business in terms that you have to really think long term and short term. You have to ensure that you give what the market also needs. You give the student what
yeah,
um, is happening in the uh, in the job market. So the alignment of private institutions are a lot better because there is a necessity. Because if you don't align, you will cease to exist. It's quite simple as that, because the competition is quite high, and everyone is fighting in their own sense for ensuring that they are offering something unique always. So the motivation to perform is a lot higher, the pressure is a lot more in private institutions. But then that's required, right? If you don't have that, you will not really think outside the box, you will not bring in quality systems within your educational institutions, all of that. So that becomes a huge driving factor today. And if you see, in terms of the ones that do well and the ones that are complacent, even in private, uh, usually there's like a cycle of 8 to 10 years. You will see good ones stay, and then the poor performing ones will just disappear. And then you, after some time, you'll again see new cropping up of new universities, institutions. So it really needs a lot of resilience for institutions to do well. And see, because I do understand students look at fees. Private institutions tend to be more expensive than a government institute. But then, if that student is really just focused on a degree, there's nothing that I can do or anybody else can do, because he'll probably just be like, I just need a MBA degree for, you know, to show it on my resume or whatever. But then you're really focused on, okay, I have a vision of this is what I want to be in 5 years, or this is what uh, makes sense. I really want to learn something the next 2 years. Then that person will make that decision of getting into a private institution. So uh, students have to make that decision based on where they see themselves.
Right. So students getting graduated should opt for higher education or jobs, which is most preferable.
So, for someone who works in higher education, a very blunt answer would be go work, get a job first. Um, I think it's more meaningful. So, I can't talk about most disciplines, but at least for a management degree, if you're looking at an MBA or a PGDM or anything with commerce management, it makes more sense because you're able to really enjoy the subjects once you come with work experience. The reason is, of course, you can relate a lot better. You can be like, you would have experienced something in your office, and then you come and realize, okay, this is part of conflict management. How do you deal with people? So when you learn all these subjects right by itself, it becomes a little difficult to relate to. Of course, we do also get um, 70 to 75% who don't have work experience who come to a master's program, and then very few percentage
Right.
of people have work experience. So that, given a choice, it makes sense to come with work experience. In fact, the MBA program itself was designed for that. When they
Yes.
initially designed it, they never thought that it would be a fresher. They always thought of it as a person who's currently working. How can I make his systems thinking a lot better? How can I ensure that he becomes a better manager, for instance? So yeah, I think that has been my, if I have to just say one thing, just go work.
Right. So, how important it is to have industry academia collaboration, especially for higher education institutions?
Extremely crucial. Like, you cannot teach or deliver a curriculum without having industry collaborations. It's very important because as institutions, you need to know what's happening outside. What's the latest technology being used in a particular sector, for instance, or what are the tools that are being used in a particular sector. Um, and teaching marketing, finance, HR, operations, analytics is all great. But then if you don't know or are not in touch or in tune with the industry, it becomes challenging. And we often, right, even at ABBS, we ensure that each year, every year, it's a question. We ask them, what is it that we can do to enhance our curriculum, the experiential component, having industry on board. So not
Yes.
only do we have industry people scrutinize what we teach, because we want
Mm.
unbiased reviews or opinions on what we are doing. We also integrate and ensure that a certain percentage is delivered by them directly. For instance, we've thought of introducing financial modeling through KPMG. So we have KPMG professionals who would actually come and teach. So the entire idea of industry academia collaboration is to make that transition a lot smoother. When somebody goes from college to work, they shouldn't feel that, oh, this is such a different world altogether. My college degree
Right.
didn't help me at all. So that transitionary phase is what we make sure that you almost feel like, okay, you know what to expect in the workspace. So similarly, we ensure that a lot of industry focused certifications are offered, um, to not just enhance the overall experience, but give students that confidence that you are well equipped, you do have the right skills. You just need to be confident enough and ensure that um, you understand what the company is looking for. So we have, for instance, all the programs that we have at ABBS, we attach some form of industry uh, collaborations, either in terms of certifications or in terms of a certain block teaching that happens for certain subjects. So um, uh, it has always been beneficial, not just for the students but also for faculty, because uh, for instance, right, some faculty ask us, can we take a break and go do some kind of spend some time in the industry, because
Yeah.
your teaching experience also kind of shifts, because you see what's
Yeah.
happening in that particular domain, and then your classroom delivery is a lot more different. It's lesser textbook and more application case based. So I think these aspects really impact both the teachers as well as the students. uh, and of course you have internships, that goes without saying, because internships really give you a sampler in its own sense. And
Yeah.
the industry always looks for longer term, so that's a feedback that institutions always get. You can't do an internship technically in 1 month. There's only so much you can contribute. So
Yeah.
to make real contribution, to make the industry feel like, okay, the students have learned something or they've been able to do something useful, those durations are a little longer. So that's something that we have also kind of tweaked and ensured that they really get a collaborative benefit, both the industry and academia.
Right. Right. So, you being in this education space, I think you are the right person to be asked this question. What exactly is the role of a teacher in the life of a student? And is it necessary for a teacher to keep themselves updated and adaptable to the changing world?
So the role of a teacher is simple. That it's a facilitator. Um, it's a very reductionist way of saying it, that the teacher is a facilitator, but a teacher does multiple things. Gone are the days where you look at a teacher just for knowledge. Knowledge is there outside. You don't need a teacher to help you with learn something new and all that. But he or she, that as a teacher, gives you that avenue or right perspective in terms of how do I learn something in order to gain that skill, or to gain a certain skill set which the industry is looking for. So the teacher should also be somebody who makes you think, and they should
Right.
facilitate. So it is not that they should give you everything on a platter. They should let you to a place where you as a student are able to think beyond what the teacher has already said, and question also what the teacher has said. Is the teacher saying the right thing or not? So it's very important to question, right? If you don't question, then the entire purpose of inquiry based learning shouldn't be lost. uh,
Yeah.
that's when something new comes out of. So that's where students learn not just the syllabus, they understand that the concepts a lot better. And the teachers have to be those facilitators. Of course they shouldn't, I've seen at times teachers, they judge students, and they make it seem like, oh, you're wrong, or this is not the right answer. That should never happen. A teacher should ensure that uh, student has the freedom to explore. If he doesn't explore, then
Yeah.
it becomes he only prepares for the exams, and he'll never remember that teacher forever.
Right. And the scenario is changing actually. I mean, I have seen a lot of teachers with a changed attitude. I mean, they are not. I mean, whatever they are saying, they don't consider it always right, but they are adaptable and accept the perception of the students
Yeah.
nowadays. So that change I have already seen in few of the students. So I hope that it will change in future also. So there was a time when every student wanted to or have an MBA degree. The scenario is still the same. So do you think there is the scope in MBA degree?
So yeah, so this is something that's so the problem is, right, it's one of those MBAs, what, it's a man-made degree. Sometime during the Industrial Revolution people said we need it, and then the funny thing is it still exists today. But why does it exist? We need to figure out. So it's not like pure sciences, right? There's no defined rules, or it's not physics, or it's not chemistry, where things are already set and you know the step one, two, three. In MBA, you have these frameworks. You have it changes every year. So that's kind of what made it survive so long. If we followed the same MBA principles or management principles that were taught 10 years ago or even 5 years ago, uh, there's no guarantee that that will work today. So there's
Right.
constant evolution. So it on in its way, right? It's a program that mimics the market. It mimics the market. So it's almost like uh, an evolving program that changes. And if you see today, we have so many variations of the MBA. There's no one variation. You have a online MBA, you have an offline MBA, you have MBA that people do on weekends, you have um, a 1 year MBA, 2 year MBA, different combinations work while you learn all these. So iterations are always there. So it's always um, evolved. It has always been catering to different parts of uh, a person's a professional life. uh, you have variations of it. There are different terminologies. People who study a master's in management, for instance, is slightly different from a MBA degree, and it's slightly different from an MSc and whatever international business. But fundamentally, you're learning similar concepts. You're learning management. You're learning the fundamentals of business. So it will hopefully continue to exist, but it will just take probably a different form. If you
Right.
kind of compare it with an MBA that is of, let's say, 2024 and 2030, it look completely different. It'll not even You'll not believe that it's an MBA. That's why it has always stayed relevant. In fact, I remember there was an article in 2009. They said, and
Mhm.
similarly in, I think, 2002, is the MBA still relevant? So this question has always been there for the past couple of decades. Everyone's been questioning, is the MBA still relevant? Is it Do you really require an MBA? And my honest answer is, not everyone needs to do an MBA. Don't go behind what most people are doing. Do what you feel is right. Do what you feel you need to like improve on. Uh,
Right.
then it makes sense. And you always have time, right? It's not that, oh, I just finished college, I want to do an MBA. Work for some time and then get into it if you feel like you're stuck in your career and you need that uh, upgrade. So that makes it versatile. That makes it worthwhile, and it's a great motivation factor for most people.
Right. You know, like earlier MBA degrees, like who get graduated in MBA, and they especially go to the consultation form. But nowadays, like even in the core companies, if you are in a managerial position and you are in some technical department, then also you do need an MBA, right? To need an MBA as in like just for your reference, how to manage your team and the entire project and everything. So that's where the technology integration in MBA, and as we are talking about like a new form of MBA which we will be able to see in future. So that is also very much necessary that MBA should cater to all the sectors, not only the consultation sector and let's say like marketing and etc.
Absolutely. So the beauty of it is, right? See, there's always this general MBA, and then there are MBAs with multiple specializations, and then there are MBAs which focus or emphasize on certain needs. Like today, right? We have, for instance, we have an MBA in business analytics. So we introduce and deep dive into analytics right from day one. And the entire idea is not to make him a specialist as such, right from the first day, but to give him a glimpse of what it is to have both technical knowledge as well as management skills. And like you rightly said, uh, most students, to be very frank, don't really know why they do an MBA. At least
Yes.
they have an idea. They have an idea. They see others doing well in their careers, but then they only get to know after a year at least, and they realize, you know what, I'm actually good at this, and I need to probably spend more of my time and energy, and do something in HR, for instance. So that realization comes. So that MBA also becomes a platform for discovery.
Yes.
Uh, like you said, it doesn't really matter. You might be 10 years into uh, the workspace. You probably are very good at marketing, but then you get a glimpse of what you have been experiencing, and you formalize that, because whatever you learn in work is informal learning.
Right.
Always having chunks of formal learning in your informal learning journey uh, kind of refines also your thinking process, and makes you a little more systematic and well prepared for, I think, like you said, not just consulting, but it can be even the real estate sector, or it can be the healthcare sector. So
Right.
the use case scenario like here is really varying. So there's no one size that fits all.
Right. So, what are the changes that NEP 2020 has brought to the Indian education system, higher education system?
Yeah, so I think since the policy came, it's one of the core principles. Of course, the entire policy is student centric. So, multiple entry and
Yes.
exits was something that was very big. The whole idea was, can students should not have the pressure of finishing a degree at one time. They should be able to get out, let's say, year one, uh, do an internship or something, or work for a year and then come back. So these aspects have been created to make sure that students have, like I said, right, you need experience to study, and then it makes more sense. So that aspect of learning becomes more refined. If you look at it's made it more flexible. NEP has made it more
Yeah.
flexible for students. They have introduced academic bank of credits to ensure that students don't have this headache of their marks not being available, or always running behind administrative people. So a lot of the power in its sense has been shifted. Um, Apart from that, you also have 3 year, 4 year degrees, where the student can get an honors degree by completing that one extra year, and then pursue a PhD right after. So a lot of these provisions have been made keeping the student in center and ensuring that more people get into higher education, also do a PhD at some point, because we have a dearth of PhDs also in this country. We want more people doing relevant PhDs. So, keeping that aside, they have also brought in and emphasized the importance of holistic education. They said learning cannot happen in silos. We need interdisciplinary or multidisciplinary education. Somebody who's learning biology should also explore artificial intelligence. It's not fixed
Yeah.
to one particular sector, and then you say that I'm specialized in XYZ. If you look at it, right, it's kind of like going in the direction of what the US undergraduate degree offers. You don't actually define what you're studying, you get into a program, and then you do your major, minor specialization, then your degree will kind of change based on what you have studied or specialized in. So I think that part is borrowed from there, and it's a good move. It's a good move as long as people are able to make sure that students feel that difference. And apart from this, there's a lot of changes in the school education. Um, they want to formalize the pre-primary, the nursery, the play school sector, um, get that into the gamut of the purview of the education department. All this to ensure that somewhere the quality is streamlined, to ensure that the right things are being taught, and um, a lot of other changes that I can think of, I think, have to also do with introducing, you know, uh, what do you call it? You have these uh, programs. Uh, they're looking at your wellness. They're looking at the mental health of students. They're also looking at your physical activity. So
Right,
it's really not, it's the framework doesn't say that you have to do this. It's more like a guideline saying that try implementing these things into your curriculum, into your system, so that the student who comes out after 3 years or 4 years is a more well-rounded individual, not necessarily that
yeah,
he or she is, specialized only in one particular area. And I feel it's good in a way that it doesn't over pressurize a student to pursue something,
right,
gives them that freedom.
right. Basically, it is an integrated approach to equip students for the future adaptability. So that's what we
Yeah.
uh, mean. So, I mean, since you mentioned about PhD, so I would like to know what was your idea behind doing PhD and pursuing your PhD, and that's in data science.
Honestly, one, I'm in the education space, the higher education space. Um, at a very personal level, I wanted to understand what does it take to do research, or what does it take
Right,
to publish a paper, because
right,
we expect faculty to do this. It's not an easy job, because the faculty plays multiple roles. They have to do admin work, they have to teach, they have to do XYZ, and top of that, doing research. Um, it got me thinking that, okay, you have to experience it yourself before asking somebody else to do it. So in a way, that was
right,
my motivation or reason to pursue it. Uh, and also because I was very interested in looking at graduate and the dropouts in um, graduate level education or undergraduate level education. Um, my research also focuses on what are the factors that go beyond your socio-economic factors. Um, we all
right,
know that most people drop out because of financial aid, or they have some issues like this. But can we identify factors beyond that that will help institutions mitigate or prepare students in a more effective manner? So my research is more towards that. It's more towards identifying problems early on before the problem comes in front of you. So I think this is something that's required because we don't want to see too many dropouts from the education space, and that's kind of been my main reason why I wanted to pursue this and give some
right.
towards. And I hopefully the idea is also, if I can share my results with other institutions, I think most of them will benefit out of it.
Right. So, if given a chance, what are the changes that you would like to bring in the prevailing Indian higher education system?
Oh my god, that's a very, very loaded question, because I'd like to change a lot of things. Uh, Honestly, I think more funding
Mm-hmm.
towards institutions. Not that they're doing a pretty decent job, but I do think there's a lot more scope, especially in teacher training, teacher empowerment, and ensuring that they're all upskilled in in a sense, that they don't feel left behind. Apart from that, I think there's a lot of scope when it comes to giving autonomy. I do believe the higher education system is still not so autonomous in nature, though they say this is the path towards autonomy and all of that. It's still quite heavy on top in terms of what decisions are being made. So, uh, like for instance, we just became autonomous last year, so it gives us a little more flexibility in what we deliver in our curriculums, and we have complete overview of the examination systems. So given that, I think more autonomy to institutions will help and create better institutions, uh, because right, the more you regulate, more creativity is also hindered, and we don't want that. We want different institutions in the country offering different things. There's no point
Right.
offering the same thing. Everyone is like, oh, XYZ is doing well, so let's offer the same thing. The idea is, can we get these 40,000 odd colleges to all focus on their areas of strength? And probably there should be more encouragement towards that, because then students will also be motivated to join the college because they are good at a certain program, not because, oh, the brand name is good or whatever. They should get it
Yeah.
that way. So I think that scope is always there, and of course, put in more money. See, I'm talking only from the top, from the top side of things, into the grassroots institutions, get into the tier 2, tier 3 towns, cities, and ensure that they are um, taken care of well. And research has also been emphasized. And in India, right, we run too much towards what the West is doing. I think we are a unique country.
Yes.
We shouldn't look at the West for most things. Of course, there are few things that you can always look at. Research should be more indigenous. It should be more local. Um, it should solve something. It should not be like, oh, I got this publication in ABDC journal or a Scopus Index journal. That doesn't make you superior than others. Solving real problems. So I think uh, I would like to probably bring more of that into the system, the education system, so that teachers, of course, teachers should be given a little more flexibility also. So government should kind of help institutions make that transition to teachers or faculty who can come in and do that. But to be very honest, I do think the UGC AICT is doing a great job. They've introduced professors of practice. They want people from the industry with a huge amount of experience to come and teach, and it's going in the right direction. But if I had to just say one thing, it's increase the funding towards teacher education.
Right. Right. All right. So this is really an insightful conversation that we had today. And thank you so much for giving us your time and joining us in. Thank
Thank you,
you.
Lisa. Thank you so much. Nice talking to you.